We put a bow on fall camp, and also, is there a chance Ole Miss could wear white helmets against Troy? Stay tuned to find out. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I am your host, Stephen Willis. Thank you very much for tuning in today. On today's show, we're going to wrap up camp very nicely. But before we do, we want to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Also, we want to thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. Do us a favor, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell for notifications, and, of course, upvote the video itself. So, let's do a little camp wrap up as we get going. There's things that we know, there's things that we assume, and there's things that are kind of unknown. And if we want to talk about the things that we know, is that this team is unbelievably deep, potentially the deepest team in my lifetime. Of course, I've told you that for 6 months. The talent infusion of Lane Kiffin is breathtaking, but as I also told you over and over for 6 months, it's one thing to be talented, it's quite another to be good. And the 2 weeks that determines really how good you're going to be in camp, those are past. So we get a report card against Troy. Now, what we assume, I assume that Jackson Dart is the quarterback in question. It hasn't been announced. It could go the other way. I mean, there's zero consequences to being wrong on this. But there's a chance that Luke Altmyer could take the first snap against Troy, and good for him, because Luke, as we told you, had an admirable performance in the Sugar Bowl and was built up. He's a 4-star recruit too, but we think it's going to be Jackson Dart. What we don't know is how good some of these transfers are going to be and what the depth chart actually looks like. That is one of the things they've done a good job of keeping under wraps, and as it goes, I think you've got a chance to see exactly how good this team could be based off of those transfers. That's going to be your key that you need to look at when you're watching the game against Troy and you're like, how good are we? The key are those transfer players, the Jared Ivies, the Kari Colemans, the Troy Browns, the Malik Heaths, the Michael Trigg, the Jackson Darts, the Zach Evans, those guys, how they settle in. They're the ones that's going to carry this team. And it'll be a nice key to see exactly where they stand. As camp goes, we kind of accomplished everything we needed to. Now, they're not going to talk about stuff. They don't need to. We are here to speculate about stuff. We're here to think about stuff. We're here to see what in our mind we want Ole Miss to get better at. And so Lane Kiffin obviously went into media days with the culture issue. He kept bringing up the culture issue, and that happened for the first week of camp. And then the quarterback competition kind of took hold. So there were answers kind of chalked up to distract people from the quarterback competition. Then the first scrimmage happened, and everybody kind of laid eyes on it. So it had to change a little bit. So it moved on. I think we had a stretch where we had a frat boy punter, which I don't think he was actually a frat boy, but we'll see what he looks like, and we'll see what the punting game looks like. That's another unknown of this fall camp, is how the punting game will look, because from accounts, Frazier Mason isn't out on the field, and he was the guy brought in to be the dude. So we will see exactly what that looks like. We don't know about the return game at all. Who's going to be back returning kicks? I've not heard one bit of speculation about that. People assume maybe Ulysses Bentley. People assume Tysheem Johnson. But we'll see what it looks like on September 3rd when they go out there to kick for the first time. This is all really fascinating stuff. But in camp, I do think what needed to be accomplished did get accomplished, because what you see is a very, really confident defense. Every interview out there, you can just see it. They ooze confidence. Not cockiness, not swagger, whatever that is. They ooze confidence. Whenever you talk about it, and they're like, yeah, we're pretty dang deep. And Troy Brown's going to be great. And Davidson Igbinosun is going to play. And there's a chance he might not start, as impressive as he's been. Quinshon Judkins is going to be down on the depth chart as well. That shows you how deep we are. When you look at the Senior Bowl watch list, what I told you yesterday, that gives you an idea of how deep this is and how this team is thought of by the NFL. There's 3 more players on the Senior Bowl watch list from Ole Miss than Georgia. Now, are we saying that Ole Miss is better than Georgia? No, of course not. But for the senior class, there's cause for optimism. Maybe cautious optimism, because we did define 2020 yesterday's podcast, and we talked about how this season, it's important to maximize it to get ready for 2023, because 2023, it's all in front of us. It's like that third year of the big money class of Ole Miss baseball. You expect them to make a run. The same thing is kind of going to happen on the football side of the field. There are going to be players galore. And anybody that declares and moves on, they're going to be taken care of in the transfer portal as well. So it's interesting. It's all very interesting, and I'm very fired up. I hope you have a good weekend. Take it off. Watch some football. Last night we put out our 3 games to watch that have our attention. It was, Nebraska, Northwestern, Stephen F. Austin, and Jacksonville State, just because of the drama that's going on around it, and Vanderbilt and Hawaii. That's our week 0 games, and we're going to do that as the season goes on. And also on Fridays, we're going to do uniform drop videos. And we can't do one now because, well, honestly, there's no uniform announcement to do it off of now. But just a little taste of what we're talking about. This is a video that was posted by Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin is a staff member doing one-on-ones. But the important thing that I would like to point out in the background is the helmets. They wore navy blue throughout all of camp and into basically game week. Now, I'm not saying Ole Miss is going to wear white helmets, but this changeover happened, to my knowledge, today. So it will be important to see exactly what Ole Miss will do. We can speculate all we want to on this, because this is a big deal, and there's going to be people that just don't care about it, but there's going to be some hardcores like me, some sickos that really care about it. Is this the chance we see the white helmet and the red jersey? We saw recruits posing with that. It's something that it looks really good, but are we going to see the white helmets with the red jersey and the white pants against Troy? I know people are going to look at this and say, that's not Ole Miss. That's not the Ole Miss I grew up with. No, it's not. But that's okay. Remember, Ole Miss invented play in this uniform game. But long before Oregon took it out to the next level, Ole Miss invented it. When everybody else was playing in 2 colors, a red jersey and a white jersey, an orange jersey and a white jersey, Ole Miss always had 3, sometimes 4. Steve Sloan had the blue number jersey. That's where that started, with the blue stripes that was worn last. That he wore, that was worn last in that group in the Independence Bowl. But Hugh Freeze brought them back in 2013, as famously with the blue pants and all that. And it took time. It probably took 50 years for us to get this right. But we finally have a really good strip of uniforms. We got a Navy helmet. We got a powder helmet, a white helmet. We got the Navy jersey, the red jersey, the powder jersey, the white jersey. I think we're going to have a white jersey with powder numbers eventually. And they're going to be able to do stuff like that. But I think the uniforms are about where they need to be for the first time, really, in a long time. Now, I'm also the type of person that truly enjoys change. That's something that's always been okay with me. And change never bothered me. changing something different that can be fun, that can be great. Nothing is happening right now that you would be upset if something changed. So I know that there's other people that are like, oh, Ole Miss is red jersey, navy jersey, and one helmet or another, and that is the Ole Miss we're used to with the gray pants and yada, yada, yada. I get that. I understand that entirely. I mean, you can see behind me from my knickknacks. But they look good. We have the best color scheme in the country, and not being flexible with it is kind of pigeonholing ourselves. If Oregon at green and yellow can make themselves into a brand over time, imagine what Ole Miss could do with those colors. Because no matter what, red and blue, it doesn't really beat that. There's so much you can do, especially with two different color blues, because that basically gives you two separate palettes. It's quite impressive. Anyway, I hope everybody enjoys the weekend. We have Eddie Small coming up in the second segment, and Tom Vanderford's going to be available in the third segment if technology doesn't get us all and take us all down. So if you see me again, something happened. But I hope everybody has a really good weekend. I hope everybody has a lot of fun. But I just wanted to wrap up camp and get ready for Troy Prep. We're here because we're going to start game week stuff next week. That's going to be really cool. Anyway, let me tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all of your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. The ultimate college football preview is here, a 7-episode preview with college experts, local team experts, and Odyssey college football insiders. It's everything you need to be ready for the college football season in one spot. Search for the Ultimate College Football Podcast on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. I am on the SEC one if you're interested in that. Anyway, in the first segment, we talked about what we know, what we assume, and what we need to know. Those three things are key with the Ole Miss football program. And that becomes an important thing, especially the what we need to know, because those questions might not be answered until after Kentucky, whenever that run starts, because you have four games set up in September that Ole Miss should win. Ole Miss should be able to out-talent the teams they're playing, just period. They should be able to out-talent. But in October, you have Kentucky, you have Auburn, you have LSU, you have Vanderbilt, and everybody's like, Vanderbilt, but you have Vanderbilt. They count too. So that is difficult game, trap game. Because if you look where Vandy sits in the schedule, that becomes a thing too. So look at October as the Rosetta Stone of this season, to where you're going to be tested. Kentucky can play murder ball. They're going to hand the ball to Craig Rodriguez and try to do exactly what Alabama did to Ole Miss last year. That just period. That's what they're going to do. Will Levis is a decent enough quarterback. He's not great, but he's a decent enough quarterback. LSU, you don't know what you're going to get with LSU. Supremely talented team. Supremely. Auburn, the wounded dog situation there. Ole Miss should win the game. They have the talent to win the game, but I've seen Ole Miss lose that game before. And Vanderbilt, a trap game. Handle your business. You move into November, Texas A&M on the road. That's going to be a difficult game, although Texas A&M is kind of in show-me territory in regards to not having a quarterback. Alabama, coming to Oxford. Tough game. Toughest game on the schedule. No doubt about that. But Alabama coming to Oxford. Hopefully Jackson Dart or whoever's playing quarterback has everything figured out by then. Arkansas, this is the game that scares the hell out of me. It just does. Because where it sits between Alabama and 5 days before Mississippi State, and it's in Fayetteville, which is a house of horrors for Ole Miss football. It just always has been. So I want to see what happens in that one. But if Ole Miss can get through that one and get through the Egg Bowl, which is going to be difficult, it's a game that I think Ole Miss can win, but it's going to be difficult the way it's situated. So we'll see exactly how that goes for the Rebs this season. Because, like I said, you can see that Ole Miss has a chance to go 5-7, like on the very low end of the floor, and you could see them going 10-2, 11-1. You could see them anywhere in between, and it's all because of those games I just mentioned. Ole Miss can go 8-8, they can go 4-4 in their first 8. I don't think they can go like 2-6, but that's where the 4 comes from, and then you have that tough November. That's the reason I say that 5-7 is on the table. So we'll see what happens. But the important thing is, as we told you yesterday, that Ole Miss needs to maximize 2022, because 2023 could be special if they can maximize and get to a certain point this year. Everything kind of builds on itself, even though this isn't a program type situation, but it'll be easier for Ole Miss to make a run with expectations in 2023 after a 8, 9, or 10 win season in 2022 than it will be for Ole Miss to be 5-7 and try to convince people that they're going to be good the next year. It's going to be interesting. You already see the national media narrative that's going around that's a little bit askew. I mean, it goes everywhere. You see Ole Miss from dead last in the West all the way to second in the West. And there's no consistency through any of the analysts. It's absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, Tom Vanderford is not going to be here today. He had an emergency medical thing he had to go taken care of. So good luck to Tom. We're thinking good thoughts about you and hope everybody else is as well. Eddie Small is taking his spot in the third segment. He will be here in the third segment, and he's got about 18 minutes of talking about playing for Brewer. Jabari Small, his brothers, Tony Small and OJ Small, and all of that as Ole Miss and others build around this Eddie Small thing. Because Eddie Small held the receiving yard record for about 30 years. Not a small feat. So we talked to him about that as well. But let's hear from our sponsors right now. When we come back, Eddie Small. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, including iTunes and Spotify. Leave a 5-star review. You can say whatever you want to say. Just make sure it's a 5-star review. You can say, Steve has fantastic guests, but he's a little bit of a narcissist himself. I'll say, okay, just make sure it's a 5-star review. I'm here with Eddie Small. We are always talking about the OG of the receivers corps. Like Shay Hodge talked about him being the OG and Mike Espy, and everybody's going back. Well, we got Eddie Small from like the early 90s, and the original, he put 2 bills up on Vanderbilt. How you doing, Eddie?
I'm doing great, and yourself?
Pretty good, pretty good. We just concluded camp at Ole Miss, and I kind of wonder, what was it like to play for Billy Brewer back under that staff in that era?
Well, man, Billy Brewer, back then, Billy, the dog, as they used to call him. And Billy was an open door type guy, man. Great players coach. Old school. He didn't hold anything back. That's on the field, off the field. on the field he push you, and off the field, man, he'll hug you and tell you he love you. He, old school type coach. Great guy.
Yeah. What's a camp story? What do you remember, something that happened particularly in camp?
Oh, man, with Coach Brewer, he held one thing about Brewer, he held us, accountable as far as a team. We wasn't the most gifted team, we wasn't the fastest nor the biggest, but we played with, I guess that dog mentality. It was instilled in us from day one. I recall my freshman year when I reported to Ole Miss, and I was only 17 years old, and being away from home, you kind of, especially in my case, 11 hours away, you're you're a little nervous. First time away from mom and dad, and man, they had a way of introducing you to the college level. Hey, you was like you can forget about mom and dad. No one's here to save you, but you're you're mine now. And man, I knew from that point on. I mean, hey, I was happy. I was happy to know that I was in good hands, but at the same time, like man, just a little nervous. You can be a little nervous at that point. But it was all good, man. Brewer, he always had your best interest. You know.
Yeah, I think when you signed with Ole Miss was just coming off a Liberty Bowl. They lost their quarterback with John Darnell. So
Correct.
you would have gotten right there as a true freshman with Rush Alls and Tom Luke. Talk about how the offense kind of ran through those guys and what each of them brought to the table.
Man, back then, I mean, we ran an old offense under what was the offensive coordinator, Red Fox is what they called him. But man, we were Tom and Rush Alls they brought a lot to the table. Tom himself, I mean, he didn't have as big of an arm as Rush Alls, but man, he was a hard nosed player. I don't know if you recall watching him play. Man, he pretty much was the guy that ran the option. He did most of the running, but he would stick his head down there, and if we needed a yard or two, man, we can count on Tom. When it came to Russ, I mean, Russ had a big arm. I mean, he he had a nice ball. I always wondered to this day, like how come that guy didn't get a shot to the NFL? But both of them brought a lot to the game, and it was first time I think during that era, first time you ever seen two quarterbacks, rotating in and out like they did. But they did a great job, both of them.
Do you remember that? To the team. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that Gator Bowl in '90 with Michigan?
Yeah, do I?
Yeah. What kind of happened there?
What happened? Yeah, it's hilarious. I mean, we did great that year. We did good. I think we went 9-2, if I'm not mistaken. And it came down to that Gator Bowl. It's like who was the real big M? You got Michigan and you got Mississippi, and man, it was amazing. I think that year, I don't know if we had played UT, the Bowls. I'm not sure. I think it was my freshman year, but long story short, at the time, I think UT may have been like one of the bigger teams we ever faced against. And man, when we played against Michigan, we had like I don't know if you remember Sean O'Malley. He was a nose guard. He's like 5'9", 5'10", and but Sean did a great job. I mean, all year long. But it was man amongst boys out there. Them guys. I think they had Desmond Howard. Man, he ran all over us. That it was. I mean, it was one of them type deals. We were like, hey, man, we stuck in there. But one little incident after halftime. Anytime I get to see Tom, Luke, and Rush Alls, we came out after halftime, and they were like discussing who was going to start the series. And man, it was funny, but they were like, hey, you want to start? Like, no, you can start. And it was one of those type games where you just couldn't wait to get it over with. Like, good God. But yeah, it was a heck of an experience, man.
Yeah. But I wanted to start with that one. We're going to get happier after this.
Okay.
You ended up in, I think, 92 was the year with the Jolie Dunn defense and Cassius Ware and Dwayne Dotson and all of those guys. Talk about going up against them every day in practice, because you talk about men amongst boys, those guys could play.
Well, put it this way, man. Thank God we didn't have to go against them guys. Being on the first team, normally it's like ones against twos, But man, and truth be told, I don't recall them guys ever doing like scrimmaging, or I'm not gonna say scrimmaging, but Man, Joe, I just recall Joe Lee just running the crap out of them guys. They ran from sideline to sideline, and it was like first guy to the ball. I mean, all 11 had to get to the ball. Man, them guys, it was amazing. I mean, and I look back at it now. During that time, you don't really appreciate the guys that you're around, but you do look at the stats. Like, dang, we ranked number like 1 and 2 in defense, but you don't. Man, I look back at videos, I'm like, man, we had a beast on defense. Norman Hand, of course. I mean, Chad Brown. The list goes on. A whole bunch of guys. Secondary were awesome. So Johnny Dixon, my old roommate, he was. Yeah, that whole defense was stacked. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember which year it was. It was either 92 or 93. And I was in high school in Mississippi and had recruit tickets and went up to a Georgia game. And Cassius Ware absolutely killed Eric Zier. And it was picked up. Abdul Jackson picked it up and ran in for a touchdown. But that play will always stick out in my mind.
Yeah. Man, them guys, I mean, Dwayne Dotson, I recall, Dwayne would study film. And he'd have, of course, him and Cassius, they were roommates. But them guys, they were serious. I mean, they were dedicated to that film, to that football team. And, it's like Dwayne saw plays before they even happened. I think he was one of those ones that were like ahead of his time. Cassius Ware, man, a specimen. Even to this day, I think he's still a specimen. I mean, you look at that guy. But that's on the field. You know him off the field, like totally opposite. Great guy, loving guy, man, a real soft, big teddy bear, to be honest with you. But those some great guys, man. Great guys.
All right, so we're gonna talk about the Vanderbilt game. That record held up for about 30 years. I think AJ might have been the receiver that broke it. I can't remember which one, but it was in the mid 2000s that it went down.
Right.
But how did that offense? And this isn't any slight against you at all, but Ole Miss didn't throw the ball very much. Like,
correct.
Yeah. How did you get 210 yards in a Vanderbilt game?
Well, back then, man, we were like. We used to talk about yaks, it's about yards after catch, and then we took pride in that as receivers, the guy who held the record prior to me was Pat Coleman. I think Pat Coleman he had just left, so I think his record may have stood maybe 2 years, about 3 or 4 years maybe. Mm-hmm. I can't recall exactly, but once again. In Red Fox offense as a receiver, you're in a 3-point stand. My brothers them give me a hard time about that to this day. But anyway, but so you're not in like a running, in a type offense that the ball just stayed in the air. No, like today, I only can imagine. But and I don't like to get caught up in that. I don't want to sound like an old head that's bitter, so and so. But God knows, man, about So any opportunity, of course, back then you didn't get too many balls thrown your way, so you tried to make the best of it. Every opportunity given. So if I catch the ball, I'm trying to get to the end zone. I don't give a damn where I was. Excuse my language, but I don't care. We're on our 2-yard line. I'm trying to go 98 yards with it. So I had a couple of big runs in that game. And funny thing about it is when I broke the record, I actually took my tape off. I was letting one of the younger guys, go in and. Get some reps, and somewhere I know they couldn't find a helmet, so I had to run in, and I've taken my tape off, my gloves off, and man, it just so happened the ball came my way, and boom, I broke the record. Scored a touchdown. It was the last catch I had. I think it went for like 30 yards or something like that. But yeah, amazing game, man.
So we're going to talk about this in a second, but your son is the starting running back at Tennessee. If you were in that Josh Heupel offense, doing what Cedric Tillman does, I can see you smiling already just thinking about it.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, man, I don't like, I don't never talk about it. I just, in my head, you just like, wow, really? Man, it's a receiver's dream. I mean, if you look at the draft, I don't think the first running back got taken until like second round last year. So I just let you know, like, man, it's a receiver's game this today. So yeah, looking back at it, you would, looking at it now, you'll think like, man, whew, how fun would it be just
Yeah.
to know that the ball, your ball's coming your way a good 8 times, 10 times a game, and you know, that's paradise for a receiver. Has to be. Um,
And you have a unique situation. I think two of your brothers and your son have played for SEC schools.
right,
Talk about that. Were you the first, and then like OJ
Tony.
and Tony?
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I was the first. I'm the oldest. And the funny thing is, Ole Miss didn't really recruit neither one of them. And I was, my middle brother Tony, he hung out with me up there at like the summer of going to my senior year. And I think actually Leroy Mullins did a well, he didn't do the surgery. He did the physical therapy on his knee. I think my brother he had some type of little bone removed from his femur or whatnot. But long story short, so they were familiar with Tony. And I don't know what happened. Tony. I don't know if they didn't think they could get him at the time. I think Tony was like may have been he was highly ranked, as a receiver. But man, when did that stop anything? So it was kind of one of them type deals. Like, man, I had got a few phone calls, and people were like, man, what's going on? Why? And I didn't have a clue, and I didn't understand it. But everything worked out for the best. Yeah, he ended up going to Georgia, and he did pretty well there. And of course, OJ, my youngest brother, man, he played quarterback actually in high school. And I'm not going to sit and lie to you. When Steve Spurrier recruited him as a receiver, I'm like, man, get the heck out of here! How in the world are you getting up at Florida? Playing with quarterback. but he, I give him a hard time, but he made the best of it. Both of them ended up making all SEC wide receivers, and so and at the end of the day, man, they were able to go out and create their own, the legend or whatnot. So yeah, they didn't want to follow in Big Brother's footsteps, I suppose.
Yeah, and with Jabari, we're not going to talk about recruitment or anything like that. But what is it like to be a dad watching your son playing in the SEC in that situation? Because that's got to be a complete role reversal, and all the stuff you were counting on whenever you were playing, you're like, no, just be okay.
Hey, right. And man, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'll be 50 years old this year, and I'm like, man, and this is my youngest son. This is so it's of course playing running back, and I was type. I want him to play on defense. I never worked with him as a receiver. Never worked with his hands. I'm like, no, dude, we're gonna be on the defensive side of the ball. But anyway, Jabari, he's like that. He's a running back, and man, back like I was saying earlier, Brewer, he instilled that dog in you. I don't care if you hurt. I don't care if your arm is when you run, your arm is your shoulders popping out of just popping out the joint, or man, you keep your butt in the game. And so you get older, you learn like, dang, I should have took better care of my body, so on and so forth. But so you kind of want to, I guess, inform your kids. And I tell Jabari, like, man, hey, man, so there's a life after football. So hey, you get binged up, you tell the coach, and you come out the game, and you take care of yourself. It's not, But anyway, long story short, he ended up getting injured, unfortunately, early on last year, and man, and he constantly pull himself out the game. Then he's wondering, like, well, why they saying I'm not tough, Dad? Why did they question my durability? I'm like, do you really want to know? And this is like after he's been whining and crying. I'm gonna say not whining and crying, but a little concerned about, them questioning his toughness and his durability. And I told him, I said, man, do you want Dad or you want the me to get it to you raw? He's like, give it to me raw, Dad. Well, I'm gonna tell you then. Well, you need to keep your ass in the damn game. I don't give a damn unless your arm is falling off. If it's not hanging off by your skin, you keep playing. And I hate to tell you this, but if this is what means, if it means that much to you, this is what it's going to take. And so, of course, man, I'm in the stands. I'm nervous. I'm like a nervous. I'm one time I was at the booth trying to get something to drink, and I'm sitting there shaking the entire time, like, man, and I know he's hurt, and it's like, man, you got 250-pound linebackers, coming at you full speed, and you have 2 blown shoulders, and you're doing the best you can And I understand it's football, but I'm like, man, it's the parent, this dad, is talking like, man, damn, that's my poor son out there, like, get out of there, son. But hey, anyway, this is what he want to do. So, hey, he made it through. He made it past it. So he's able to overcome that.
Yeah. Do you know who Jabari kind of reminds me of? And I think this player was at Ole Miss when you were there, but he has a little bit of Corey Philpott in him.
Yeah, he does real quick. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Philpott, man, he was a slasher, real fast, real quick. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, he hits a whole 100 miles per hour. Yeah, he can make people miss and open.
Jabari's kind of a slight guy. You just get nervous because he runs hard, but
you're right. Yeah. Here's the thing, man. I'm like, once again, the old Eddie will be like, hey man, you run through these guys. You put your head down, you run them over, or so on and so forth. Now I'm like, hey man, look, you can avoid all the contact you can, do it. You're right. Make them miss. It's not your job to get, to take on tackles. It's your job to make them miss. So, he does a pretty good job at it.
Yeah.
Corey Philpott, great. Yeah, that would be a great comparison, without a doubt.
Yeah, anyway, get more of the SEC by making Locked On SEC your second listen every day. Host Chris Gordy and his local experts of Locked On take you across the SEC in 30 minutes or less. Make Locked On SEC your second listen of the day. That's Locked On SEC. Eddie Small joining us. Thank you very much today, man. This has been a great call, and hopefully in the future, we can get back and do it again, man.
Oh, yeah, sounds good. It was a pleasure. I appreciate you having me.
All right. Have a good day, man.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.